Okay, it's 7:30. I want to introduce myself. I'm Kevin Wilson. I'm the superintendent of schools here at Bing. Thank you for joining us. This has been certainly a different time in our country and especially in schools these days. And we've been working hard to try to come up with the best possible plan to get our students back in school, because we know that's, we want our kids back in school. We know you want your kids back in school. And so thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your day to listen to our plan. Like I said, this has been difficult to come up with a plan that is, we feel is good to keep students and staff safe. But we feel this plan is a plan that will get us into school and will keep us in school. We know it's not a perfect plan. We know that we looked at a lot of plans out there, and I don't know that there is a perfect plan out there, but this plan is designed to keep students and staff safe. So that's when we set out to make this plan, that was our number one goal, is how are we going to keep our students safe? How are we going to keep our staff safe? And so a lot of people have put work into this. This isn't just me that's been up here working on this. My assistant, Stacy Cass, has been working quite a bit on this, and as well as our principals. Principals have been working hard, special services director, cafeteria, nurses. I mean, everyone's been putting a lot of time and effort to make sure that we come up with the best possible plan. Our plan is based on guidance from the CDC and the State Department of Health, State Department of Education, things that they've put out, their guidelines, their recommendations. And so we've taken those and tried to adapt it as best we can to fit our school and to make sure that we can do the things that they're recommending. We did receive quite a few questions in advance on our info account at bingschools.com. And so we're going to answer those questions that you sent in advance. If you have other questions as we go through this, please feel free to email those to info@bingschools.org. And someone is monitoring that, and they will be getting questions to me. And so, we'll do the best we can to answer all your questions. If there's a question we don't have the answer to tonight, we will get back to you to make sure that we give you the information that you need. So with that, I want to get started. I'm going to share a screen with you, hopefully. And so this is our back to school plan. And so we're going to release this onto our website and our social media platforms when we finish with this. The reason we're doing this in a video chat is because a lot of times whenever we send out information like this, everyone has questions, and that's perfectly understandable because we all have questions about this. And so we thought, this will give us a chance where maybe we can explain some of the things that are in here and maybe try to answer some of your questions so that you can have the opportunity to get those answered right then. And if we don't answer your questions, like I said, you can email, you can call your building principals, call me, call Ms. Caps, and we'll do our best to answer your questions at that point. But we feel like, let's just put it out there and let you guys see this. And if you have questions, then maybe I can answer them as we go. The first thing in our plan, table of contents, you can check that out. It's just kind of a brief thing, just so you can see where to go for information. And then there's a letter from me that kind of explains where we're at, what we're doing, and just some of the things that we're going to need you to do. The most important thing, and we'll talk about this as we go to the plan, is doing self-screens at home, to where if your child does not feel well and they're experiencing any of the symptoms of COVID, that you keep them home. And we're going to detail things of, what that's going to look like attendance-wise and things like that, so that you feel comfortable and saying, you know what, you don't feel good today, you're not going to school, we'll just do it from home. And I also put in here that, I think this is important to understand. This is, we're all on the same team. I mean, there's nothing that we want more than to see your kids in school. And we know that you want to get your kids back in school. I know it's been 5 months, and that's been a long 5 months for all of us. And so we're all on the same team here. So the things that we're doing, we're putting in place. whether you choose the traditional route or the virtual route, it's all meant to get your kid back in school and for us to get back to some sort of normalcy. But to do that, it's going to take all of us working together and having that communication so that we're all on the same team. And so the first thing in our plan is our school nurse information. And so you'll be able to get this plan printed off if you want, but those are our school nurses. We have a school nurse at Homer, one at Francis, and then we have one on the Bean campus that covers the elementary, junior high, and high school. And so those are going to be important points of contact. If you feel like, you know what, I need to contact the school and my child has been sick or showing some signs, when you contact school nurse, they'll get the ball rolling towards us and the principals to make sure that we understand what's going on with your child's health. And so make sure you have their information, and you know, if your child comes to school and then starts feeling ill at school, they'll be the ones that are making contacts with you to say, hey, you need to come pick up your child. What can you do to help the school? We've had a lot of these questions. What can I do to help? And so there's things here that you know, if you can find some of these things, we could use some of these things. Donations of hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, mask would be helpful. Taking your child's temperature every day before you send them to school, that's going to be important. If they exhibit any symptoms of illness, keep them home. It's not it's not the year to say, you know, well, I think you'll be okay, just, you know, and I've done that with my own kids. Hey, no, yeah, I think you'll be okay, just go to school. And this may not be the year to do that if they're exhibiting those symptoms. Openly communicate concerns with us, with the school nurses, counselors, anybody like that you have concerns with. Make sure you're communicating those with us. Practice wearing face coverings at home, and this is something that's going to take some getting used to, but we feel like that's going to give us our best chance. And so just practicing that with your children at home, that's going to help us. We're going to change the visitor protocols. You know, we ask for your understanding of some of that stuff because that's going to look different than it has in the past. And so working with us as we do that. And then if we ever do have cases, working with us and the state health department on tracing, because we feel like that's going to be important. So here are our options that we're doing for school this year. Option one is a traditional school. This is schooling that we've always had. It is going to look different with the things that your kids have to do in class and the amount of cleaning we do and things that could happen out of it. But this is face-to-face instruction in the classrooms like we've done in the past. There are going to be new additional digital components that we're adding so that if there is a transition that needs to happen because of cases within our school or lack of adult supervision, things like that, that we can transition a lot easier than we did back in the spring. School is going to begin August 13th as of this date. I mean, this is one of those things, and I should have prefaced all of this with saying this is subject to change as things evolve and as we have new information. So these are our plans as of today, and who knows, they could change tomorrow, but this is what our plan is right now. So we do plan on starting school August 13th, whether you're traditional or whether you're virtual. So students are in the traditional school, face-to-face instruction, and then if there's something happens, a child is positive with COVID and they have to go home, or there's a quarantine situation, those students are going to transition to a hybrid learning model or an at-home learning, distance learning, where they will be continue to be taught by their homeroom teacher that they're in. So if they're, you know, in a third grade class at Homer and they're at traditional school and we get shut down for some reason, then that third grade teacher will continue to teach your child in that setting. We're going to have digital days. We've seen a lot of districts that have planned to take days out of school and say, like, take a Friday off or a Monday off, where kids stay home and they practice their digital days so that we're all on top of that. We plan on asking the board to recommend one digital day that we keep students home. It'll be in September, probably later September, so we've gotten everyone on board and everyone is used to the device. But most of our digital days are going to take place in the classroom, where students show up and that teacher may say, today's a digital day. And so students get their devices out and teachers work with them and make sure they know how to connect. They know where to go to access their lessons, access the information they need, and they practice in the classroom. We felt like that was a better option than to, you know, have to look at obtaining childcare or things like that. And so there will be a day, probably in each semester, where we do ask you to work at home with your kid on those days, but we're going to try to limit those planned digital days to 1 each semester. Our second option is the Bing Virtual Academy. This is new for us, and this is one of those things that, it's going to be a good option for some. If you don't feel comfortable sending your child to school for one reason or another, that's fine. That's what this option is there for. It also begins on August 13th. I will say the deadline to enroll in that is on August 3rd. And so if there's something that happens after that, it'd have to be something pretty big for us to do that, because we've got to make plans to get everyone enrolled in what they're going to be doing there. If you choose the virtual option, you are enrolled as a Bing student. It's 100% online, individual learning plan. You have 24/7 access to your assignments, learning activities, and it's facilitated by a Bing teacher. And there will be virtual tutoring sessions with Bing teachers available. So if your child is a biology student and they're in high school and they're having trouble with an assignment on their Edgenuity platform that they're doing, then we're going to have teachers available. It may be in the evening or something like that, where they have office hours where your child can connect with that teacher to receive tutoring. And so that's what that'll look like. For elementary, it'll be the Calvert Learning from Edmentum that we're using, and 6th grade through 12th grade is Edgenuity, that's the learning platform there. All students, whether you're a virtual student or a traditional student, we are going to provide a device, if you need a device, to every student. And so that's at the bottom of the page there. Tablets for pre-K and kindergarten students, touchscreen Chromebooks for 1st grade students, and then 2nd grade through 12th grade students will receive Chromebooks. We believe all of those will be in before school starts, but as you can imagine, every school in the nation just about is doing the same thing, and so there's a shortage of supplies. We ordered as early as we could and feel like most of those will be in, and so your child will have a device issued from Bing Schools. If you have your own device, we're going to allow you to use that. If you say, you know what, I don't want your device, I've got my own, then that's okay as well. When you did your enrollment thing, there's a thing on there, enrollment portal. There's a page about device and the safety of the devices and how to treat them and all that. There is going to be insurance offered. That has not been finalized yet, simply because the companies that we've looked at, some of them won't insure all their devices, and so we're working through that to see what the insurance is going to look like. We imagine it's going to look something like you pay the $25 up front for your insurance plan, and then there will be deductibles at time throughout. If you have to replace a screen or a motherboard or keyboard, then there could be deductibles along with that based on how severe the damage is and things like that. So we're working on that. As soon as we have that information complete, we will get that out to you guys, and then you can choose whether or not you want to take the insurance or if you want to decline that. There was a question about students in the virtual school, if we will continue to serve them if they're on IEP, if their IEP needs will be met, and the answer to that is yes. Just because you choose the virtual option doesn't mean we're going to stop serving students. There will be IEP team decisions that are made, and so that's what that'll look like. But yes, if that's the option you choose, then that will be met. And there's also a question about on the traditional school, where there'll be like some at home, some at school. Our plan is when we do the traditional school, our hope is to stay open the whole time. And so that's where, when we talk about this plan, we feel like it's going to get us in school, and we hope it's going to keep us in school. But as when we go to school, we plan on being in school unless there's some reason we have to shut down. And it would probably, be a situation where the whole class is down. And this is going to be a weird situation, because there could be situations where the traditional school, may have 3 classes out of one building that are down, but the rest of the classes are still in session. But for the most part, there's not going to be an A-B schedule or anything like that. It's going to be traditional school is open. So while at school, this is a lot of the big questions that we had is, what are we going to do to keep students safe? And so all these procedures could change based on the absence or severity of the COVID-19 in our community. And so when we talk about opening schools, one of the first questions that we started wrestling with was, how are we going to get kids to school? And so we have a lot of students who ride the bus, and that is something that presents a challenge in itself, is how do we get students here? And so what we came up with is trying to limit the number of bus riders. If we are going to ask you, if you have the ability to bring your child to school, we ask that you do that and not put them on a bus, so that we reserve the spots on the bus and room on the bus for students who have no other way to get to school. And so if you could do that, that would certainly help us out. If you cannot provide transportation, all students are going to have to wear masks on the bus. Bus drivers are going to wear masks. The buses are going to be sanitized when they come in the afternoon, before they go out in the afternoon. I mean, we're going to sanitize them twice a day. This is an area we're going to need help. Family units will sit together and social distance from others as much as possible. So in the past, when you get on a bus, if you've got a high school student, a junior high student, an elementary student, they may sit at 3 different areas on the bus. The high school student usually goes toward the back, junior high kid in the middle, and elementary kid toward the front. We're going to ask that they all sit together in the same seat, family units. If they can't all fit in one seat, then they'll go to the next seat. We are going to have markers on the bus that say these seats are available first, and they're going to be kind of spread out throughout the bus diagonally and spread out as much as we can. And once those seats are full, then we'll go to the seats that are in between those. But hopefully that'll give us a chance, and with as many people that can bring their own children to school in their own vehicles, hopefully that'll keep the buses safe. Buses will run as long as the weather is permitting, with the windows down, to try to keep air circulating. And there will be seating charts on the buses. So that's going to help us if there's ever a case, contact tracing, where we know who's sitting on what bus at what time and who's sitting around that student. Having masks on should help. So that'll be something there. Before they enter a building, we're going to ask that you self-screen your students at home utilizing a checklist provided by the district. So there's at the back of this plan, there's a checklist that we want you to go through every morning and ask your questions and take the temperature of your child. And so you're going to answer those questions. And then if you send your child to school, you're certifying that they are healthy. And so we looked at different plans that talked about screening at doors and things like that. But every time we come up with those questions, it brought up more questions. And so you're going to certify that your kid's healthy by sending them to school. If they're not, if they answer any of those questions like, yeah, I've got a new sore throat or I've got a new cough, then don't send them to school that day. They can jump online and participate with their class online, but they won't need to come to school in those days. Staff members are also going to be asked to do the same thing, take the temperature at home, and when they report to work, they're certifying to us that they've completed the screening and they're symptom-free. We're going to limit visitors in the building. It's going to be restricted to only those necessary for essential purposes related to our students. We're not going to allow guests to come on site and eat in cafeterias until we get a handle on this and see what it's going to look like, and that could go all year. It just depends on what it's looking like. Anybody that shows up to a building will be have temperature taken and be asked to wear a mask to come into the building. And then this is a big thing that, as we talk to principals and just everyone involved with schools, is deliveries during the day. We get a ton of deliveries. And so we're going to not accept deliveries unless it's an emergency. Let me get a drink of water. Excuse me there. So only way we're going to accept that is if it's an emergency. And a lot of times it may be a thing where if you bring the delivery, you may be asked to just call the office and leave it outside, and we'll step outside and get it and then bring it in. Breakfast and lunch and snacks. Breakfast will be grab and go. Students will grab it when they come in if they eat breakfast with the school, and then they can eat it in their classrooms, or if they're at an extended day at home or in the morning, they'll eat in there. We just ask that students, we just practice with them right now and washing their hands before eating, after eating. This year, shared snacks for classrooms with birthday parties or anything like that, we're not going to do that this year. That's just one of those things where as much as we can keep out, we'll keep out. Visitors are not permitted in the cafeteria. No food deliveries for lunch. I know that's a big thing a lot of times where, you forgot something and you want to bring that. And so we're going to ask that you not bring food deliveries for lunch, just to keep everything inside the school. And then modified lunch schedules for classes. So, one of the areas that's a big concern for us is cafeterias, because sometimes it's hard to socially distance in cafeterias. And so some classes will be eating in their classrooms, some classes will be eating in the cafeterias so they can spread out. And then junior high and high school, maybe just sending kids who eat in the cafeteria to the cafeteria so they can spread out, and then other kids that don't maybe disperse throughout classrooms and things like that. And so that's what lunch and breakfast is going to look like. Hallways and passing periods, especially junior high and high school, we're going to set up traffic patterns to where we're trying to get kids to go the same direction all the time. So they're not mixing, going back and forth in two different directions in the hallways. Water fountains and water bottles. We've purchased a bunch of new water bottle fillers. And so instead of students drinking out of water fountains, those are going to be inoperable this year, and we'll be using the water bottle fillers. So students will need to bring their own water bottles with their names on there so that they can refill those water bottles. And if you need water bottles, maybe we can get some donated. I think we've got some people that have said they would donate some to us. So just let us know if you need that. Lockers, junior high and high school, we are not issuing lockers this year until, it would probably be second semester before we even look at that, but no lockers in the junior and high school. At the elementary level, there's 1 or 2 grade levels that may have lockers. If they can use those where they can socially distance and do that in the elementaries, then that may be possible. But we feel like in junior high and high school, that's the area we have the most congestion, is around lockers. And so we're not going to issue those. School supplies, we're not going to allow shared supplies. They're going to keep their individual supplies separated from others. And we're also going to have those students keep those in like go bags, where if we ever get shut down, we've got your student's bag with their supplies in there. And if we get shut down, then you can pick up that bag and we've got all your supplies in there. Library and media centers, we're going to not reshelve materials that have come back for 72 hours after they've been returned. But we will have libraries open, and we're going to try to make sure that everything in there is done correctly to keep kids separated as much as possible. All classes are going to minimize sharing materials. And so if there's ever a time that they have to share, they'll be cleaned in between use, but we're going to try to keep that to a minimum. And then desks and tables are going to be arranged facing the same direction, so that, and we have some classes that have round tables, and we're looking at getting those replaced. But if there is a round table that can't be replaced, then students will be separated as much as they can there. But most classes will be in desks in rows facing the same direction, and so that they're not breathing on each other and things like that. And then we're going to still, we talk about PE, music, art, and drama. That's some of our biggest question marks, especially music. I think a lot of the studies we've read said that a lot of the spread happened in choirs and things like that. And so most of our places we can really spread out to do that. And so we're going to just look at those classrooms, see how many students are in there, and then if we can social distance in there before we start allowing that. But all those things are being looked at. And so we're going to try to make sure that those students get to continue those classes, because we know those classes are important, and that's why a lot of kids come to school, because they enjoy that kind of stuff. And so we want to make sure they are still getting those chances. Recess, we had a lot of questions about this. Will students continue to have recess? Yes, we plan on having recess. They're going to use hand sanitizer. If we have to clean between, we've got plans to try to do that. And then also just scheduling of when students are out there and who's out there. School assemblies, we're going to try early on not to have school-wide assemblies. It may just be a class level or a grade level. But that'll be more of a principal decision, but we're not going to, in the junior high and high school, a lot of times in the past, we'll have handbook assemblies where the whole high school is in there, the whole junior high, and that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So attendance is critical. for anyone who has fever or symptoms of the illness to stay home. There will be no attendance awards this year. There are no exemption days for this year. And so, as far as sending my kid to school because they want perfect attendance, we're not going to recognize that this year. Well, my student wants to be exempt, and I've had my own kids who have said, I'm going to school. I want to be exempt, and that's just not going to happen this year. So if you don't feel well, if you get that fever, stay home. Please contact school when you cannot attend school in person. And so I think a question just came in that said, will traditional students be counted absent if they stay home with symptoms? And the answer to that is no. But if they get online and do something, if they check in, if you're a traditional student and you're at home, you don't feel well, you're still going to have access to your class's Google Classroom. And so you'll be able to get online, do something, check in, just show that you looked at something. Or if you're sick and you don't feel like doing it, that's fine. But the next day you may feel better and you may do 2 assignments. And so we're looking at a new attendance policy that will kind of determine what they have to do during a week or during a time period to be counted as absent. But no, our plan is as long as you've done something online at home, you're present. And so that should hopefully set some minds at ease about, well, my kid's missing this. Well, they can get online and participate in a lot of things the kids are doing. It may not be live instruction, but it may be something that's been recorded or just some of the reinforcement activities that classes are doing that day. And so that should take care of that. Hygiene, we're going to require kids or remind them to wash their hands often for at least 20 seconds. We're going to have hand sanitizer, in the classrooms and buildings they enter. And we're going to ask them to enter those, when they enter and exit classrooms, especially junior high school, to use hand sanitizer. And I'm not sure, we've changed this up just a tad bit today, and I'm not sure. So teachers in junior high and high school and all levels will have spray bottles with cleaner in them. And so before students come in and after they leave, they're going to be spraying down desks, and we'll be cleaning desks in between classes, in the junior high and high school, so that when kids come in, they're sitting at a clean desk, and when they leave, their desk is clean. And so elementary, it's, a lot of classes don't switch classes, they're self-contained, and so they'll be in the same classroom, and so they may not have to have their desk cleaned as much as a junior high or high school classroom. And so we've got those supplies to teachers, and so they'll be taking care of that in between classes. This is probably one of the biggest questions we had, is extended day. And this has been one we've been holding off on for as long as we could, just because trying to check on, see what some of our partners in the area were doing, and see if they were going to have programs. And so this is going to look different this year. We plan on having before school extended day and after school extended day. The problem is going to be some of the people, groups who take some of our kids after school normally aren't going to have programs open when we start school. And so we know that there's going to be an influx of students who need to use our extended day programs. And so space is going to be limited at our extended day sites. And it's going to be based on how many kids we can adequately serve, based on space and staffing. And it's one of those things, how many kids can we keep safe? How many kids can we keep in an area that we social distance? Because we don't want to go all day doing all these things we can do to keep kids social distance and as small groups as possible, and then throw 300 kids into a room for extended day. And so based on that, we're only going to be able to, if you're going to be able to attend extended day at the campus you attend. So if you're at Francis has extended day, that's your extended day. If you go to any of these Bing sites, Bing Elementary, Bing Junior High, or Bing High School, and you have to go to extended day, you're going to have to go to Bing extended day. Elementary has an extended day, and that's where you'd go. If you're at Homer, you'll be at the Homer extended day. Now, that's going to have to be something that, like I said, there's going to be limited number of spaces available. We'll do as much as we can, because we know that's important for you guys that are working, and that's a big part of how things work, is just us, offering that extended day. And so, we plan on doing that, but it's going to look a little bit different. And so I know that may be tough for people whose children have gone from Bing to Homer, and they go to extended day for you to pick them up there. But just in order to make this work, that's what we're going to have to do this year. And then if something happens later in the year and other groups start to open back up and we can adjust, and we can adjust at that point. But starting out, this is what it's going to have to be. And then mental health professionals. An essential component to what we do is the social, emotional, mental wellness of students and staff. And so that's a big concern of ours coming back to school, because it's been 5 months since we've been in school. And so I know the impact that this has had on me and my family. And I know I've talked to other families, and just not being in school has been hard. And so we're going to have a lot of students coming back that are going to be in different places. And so we want to make sure that we have those mental health professionals there available. So we have counselors, and we're trying to add counselors. So we believe we've got that done. So we can do what we can do to help serve your child's mental health. All right, before I move on, let me answer a few questions that I've gotten sent to me. Will tablets and computers come home with every day, even with little ones? How little are we talking? That's the question probably. The tablets are going to have Chromebook or their cases, the tablet cases. And so, that's just going to be something that we have to look at as we get going. I would think initially they probably won't be coming home, because we're going to make sure that they're there and we're have them each day in class. But as we get going, then there may be a time we start saying, if we see an uptick in cases and the county's getting closer to the level that they would look at shutting us down, then maybe we do start sending those home at that time. But that'll just be more of a decision of what we have to look at, building level, teacher level, and that. So that may not be a great answer for that, but I would think early on, don't expect them to be bringing it home every night. Okay, I'm going to go to the next page. And so this has been a big discussion in everything that we've done, talking about the use of masks and risk levels and when schools close and all that. And so last week, State Board of Education had a meeting. State Department of Education Superintendent Hoffmeister recommended that we go with this plan based on the color coding system that the health department put out a couple of weeks ago. And basically it's, they're going to rate your counties either green, yellow, orange, or red. And then the alert system that we use falls into that. And so if your county's in green, face coverings are strongly recommended for all. And then yellow and orange and red, it goes up. We are going to adopt this. The state board made it to where it was a recommendation to local districts that they do this. And so just based on what we've been reading and studying, we feel like this is the plan that gives us the best opportunity to start school and stay in school, is that students, if we fall in these areas, are wearing masks. And so right now, Pontotoc County is in the yellow. And so in that yellow, face coverings are required at all times for staff. Face coverings are required for all students in a being school vehicle. So that's buses included. That's if softball team is traveling to a game somewhere, they have masks on. Or if you're in a school suburban going somewhere, you've got a mask on. Pre-K through third grade students may take their mask off in classrooms when not in close contact with others. And so like if they're at their desk and they're all facing the front, maybe that's the opportunity they take off. But then if they get into a group activity, then they have mask on. 4th through 12th grade students must keep their mask on throughout the day, but they may take their mask off at PE or while eating, of course, and things like that. Now, I know that's going to be, some people feel very strongly about that both ways. And so as we looked at this, one thing I've tried to stress to our teachers is this is going to be a different year than we've ever had. And so those days of, going in your classroom and teaching solid for 50 minutes in a class, those days may not be possible this year, this semester. So what we're asking our teachers is, you've been in class 20 minutes. If you've got an outside door, let's take the kids outside spread out, make sure there's social distance, and take your mask off and relax and breathe for a little bit. And if you're in the junior high and high school, there's ways to get outside at different points to where you can take the mask off and breathe and relax and just get that heat off your face. And then when we go back in the classroom, we put them back on. And so hopefully, you know, we'll give our kids enough break, because I sat at my desk today most of the day with a mask on, and I know that it gets hot and it's uncomfortable, but we feel like from the guidance we've gotten, that gives us the best chance. And so we're going to break that up as much as possible to where students don't feel like I'm in this mask all day. And so if we go to orange low, and the county health department doesn't have an orange low or orange high, but the state department's recommendations did. Orange low, it means we're in a danger zone. All staff and students wear a mask at all times. Limited use of facilities, both indoors and outdoors, to decrease the community transmission. If we go high, then we would have to transition to a distance learning for everyone. So those kids who have been in traditional school, then they're going to go into that distance learning. And it says up to 25% of students may be in a school building at one time. That's a situation where there may be students who need to be served on campus. And so we would bring those students on campus to do that. If your student comes on campus, we would still provide lunch for those students. And then as far as if we transition to distance learning, we're also going to look at if the waivers are available like they were this past spring and summer, continue to offer meals like we did. Now, I need to do some more research on that and see if that's still available. But if we switch to that, we're going to do all we can to make sure that we can continue to feed your children and take care of them there. And then if we get to the red, schools that complete distance learning, and then only 15% of students may be in the school building at one time to meet the needs of students with special needs. And so that's the color-coded plan. Like I said, right now, Pontotoc County is in yellow. We were in yellow last week. We're in yellow this week. These levels come out on Friday afternoon. So by Friday afternoon, we should know what level we're at. And so if something happens and we've made it to the low orange, unfortunately, and we get a notice on Friday afternoon that, hey, you guys are now in the high orange, then we will start notifying you immediately then that we are, the next week, we're going to be in distance learning, and that's a week by week thing. And so for that week, we may go to distance learning. So now you're a traditional student, you're learning from your teacher that you've been with the whole time. They're working and putting lessons there. If you're a virtual student, you just continue on the path that you've been on. But you won't have that teacher teaching, you know, just the traditional students will have that. And this plan has the link where you can find that alert system, and that's that. I had a few questions come in right there. Will the district supply masks? The district, we provide a mask and a face shield for our teachers, but we can't provide a mask for every student. We will have disposable masks here, where if your child forgets one or a kid gets on the bus and doesn't have their mask, we'll give them a mask. But you know, we can't be providing masks. That's just a huge, just us trying to find that many masks would be difficult. And so we are not providing masks for students. Can students, especially elementary, wear face shields instead of masks? You know, there are some exceptions, I think, but I think the exceptions say that if you can't wear that, you need to wear a face mask or a face shield. And so I think that would be acceptable. I think I've seen some that they like hot glue or something, like something under at the bottom of it to kind of keep it, your air from, you know, going out from underneath your mask. And so we just have to look at that and see. Can parents supply the mask? I don't know if that's a question about for your own kid, or if you have some that you want to supply to other students. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we do expect parents to provide their own masks for their kids. Okay, I'm going to come back to some of these tablet and computer questions a little bit in a second. So cleaning and disinfectant protocol, we're going to train our staff on what the protocol is, cleaning and all that stuff, what that's going to look like. We have increased janitorial staff during the day. We've taken some off of night crew and put them on day crew. And so we should have enough janitors in each building, and we'll adjust that. If we need to add more, we'll add more. High touch areas throughout the day are going to be cleaned. We're at plexiglass in some areas on campus. And then, just deep cleaning as much as we can. If we have a case where a student tests positive or staff member tests positive, that will trigger even a deeper cleaning. We're going to deep clean every day, but that may be a situation where a room may have to sit empty for 24 hours, and then we go in and clean it, and then it has to sit again for a little bit. So if there's a positive case in a classroom, there's a chance that classroom may not be able to meet for a little bit because of that. Communication, this is important. So, where do you get your information? This page has our district communication. We're going to continue to send robocalls. When I do that, I'll try to do robocalls, a text, and an email. Our district website, I would check that often. And then our social media accounts, our Twitter and our Facebook are on there. And that's district stuff. School specific, everyone now has Facebook and Twitter accounts. And so schools will also send information out. And then we list the contact information on there for all the sites and your principals and their email addresses. And so, communication is going to be some key stuff there for everyone. And so here are some slides from the CDC just based on symptoms of COVID. And so it's got a wide ranging systems. And so our symptoms. And so somebody had asked, what about seasonal allergies? Do you have to stay home? And that's one of those things, that's going to hit us. Every time I cough, I'm thinking, okay, I hope that's allergies. And so that's going to, if it's seasonal allergies, you don't have a fever, and that's what that looks like. I think that's just something you're going to have to talk to the school nurse about, communicate with them. Make sure you may check with a physician and say, hey, I know it's allergies, and we good there. And so I think that's going to look different at each site and what it is, but I think it's important just to make sure that we know this is just allergies. It's not they don't have a sore throat. I think fever's been from what we understand, fever is the most telling factor of that you got that. So here are some scenarios. If a student or staff member exhibits a temperature of over 100 degrees, that student or staff member will be immediately isolated at a predetermined space. We've moved some of our nurses stations around where they have access to outside doors and they're away from other places that they've been in the past. So they'll be isolated. If they're old enough to drive and they're in condition to drive, if they're not exhibiting any of the severe symptoms, that the shortness of breath and the pressure in your chest, things like that, then they may be, just how you guys can drive home if you're able to drive. Otherwise, somebody's going to have to come get them. This is important. We need everyone to understand that if we call and say, hey, your child's exhibiting these symptoms, we need someone there as quickly as possible to pick them up. In the past, sometimes we have trouble getting people picked up. And so if you're leaving the Ada area, please make arrangements with someone that, hey, if school calls, I need you to go pick up my child. And so if they're running a fever, and so we'll contact you and then we'll need that. If you get sent home, if you have a negative COVID test, so you go get tested, it comes back negative, you can return to school after 24 hours fever-free with no fever-reducing medication. If you don't get, this is if you're sent home with a fever, okay? If you're not COVID tested, so you don't go get a COVID test, you went home with fever, you've got to stay home for 10 days and have been fever-free with no medication for 3 days. Or you have to have a release from a physician stating you can return to school after being 3 days fever-free with no medication. So, that's one of those things where if you have a fever, it's to protect everybody. The test is going to be you come back to school quicker, or you have to stay out longer. And that can be frustrating, I know, because I know that I've heard some places are taking longer to get back tests. And so, I don't know what exactly that's going to look like as we get going and schools get in and number of tests increase. And then that goes back to, if your child is sick at home, fever, please don't send them to school. And so we put this in there, the screening chart from the Oklahoma Department of Health. They released a version that and it has a draft on it. So we didn't want to put that in there until the final version's released. As soon as that final version's released, we will add it to this plan. And then, like, this plan is subject to change, and we'll add to it as we go. And if we need to change things, we can change things. This is important. Student or staff member has been exposed to COVID. And so this is based on guidance from the State Department of Health. If you've been exposed in close contact within 6 feet for 15 minutes or greater with someone, if they tested positive or is being tested, then that's a self-isolation of 14 days. So that's a quarantine period, 14 days. And that tells you what to do in there. Consider the testing, contact your healthcare provider, do your self-checks twice a day. And then if you end up being positive, you can return to work when you're cleared. If you've been in close contact with someone who may have been exposed to COVID-19, you have to contact your health provider, practice social distancing, and consider the test. So those are usually like direct contacts, and so that may look different. If you're in close contact with someone else who may have been exposed to it, they say to practice physical distancing. So, we'll be using this chart. We encourage you to use this chart as we go. If there's a positive case at school, then the health department will begin contact tracing. And like I said, we keep seating charts in all classrooms. We keep seating charts on buses. So if we get a case and they contact us and say there's a case, then we will try to, if we know who it is, if we've got that information, we will contact trace as best we can, helping them. And then we'll follow their guidelines. If they come in and say, hey, this class is okay, then we're going to follow their guidelines. If they come in and say these kids need to be sent home, then that's what we'll do based on what their guidance is. And there's a chance siblings of positive students may also be quarantined, and then that, if they're in a class, then that could be quarantined. Just depends on if there's positive cases or not. If the state chooses to close schools again, the traditional school students will move to that temporary at-home learning using their school-issued device taught by their classroom teacher. If your student gets sick and they had to stay home or they're quarantined, they're going to shift that hybrid learning and continue to participate in that learning virtually with their classroom teacher. And so let me catch up on some questions here. Do we enroll differently in virtual school? And will online support look different than last spring? So the key for us right now is if you're going to go to Bing Schools, we need you to complete the online enrollment. And if you don't do that, then on Wednesday, we're having in-person enrollment. Come to that. Once you're enrolled, then when you do that enrollment, you can contact the principal, or if you're in person, just say, hey, we're interested in the virtual option. And then we will look at getting you enrolled in that online virtual option. And so you still enroll with Bing Schools. And then once you let us know that, hey, I want to do the virtual school, then we will then get you enrolled in that online part of that. And so will online support look different than last spring? Last spring was not a good example of what this is going to look like. Number one, when we closed in the spring, they told us you can't take grades. This is what this, the state gave us pretty strict guidelines. No, teachers can't be in classrooms. And so we did the best we could do in the short amount of time we were given. We felt like we had a pretty good product, but we know it wasn't enough. Kids weren't being taught new lessons. They were reviewing things. If you had a high school kid, there's a good chance they probably didn't log on to anything. And so this is going to look way different because it's going to be new material being taught, grades being taken. If you do virtual school and you do extracurricular activities, there's eligibility issues that come into play. So you're going to be expected to log on and complete work. It's going to look a lot different for parents that choose that option as well, because there's going to be, you know, a lot of support that needs to be there. Because it's got to be, you know, it's hard. Sometimes that's hard if you're not a self-starter to for a student to get going and get their lessons going. So it's going to look way different than it did. So will the online support be there? You know, the online options that we're using for straight virtual school, I've not done a whole lot of training on those, so I don't know exactly what their online support looks like, but you know, we will have some tutoring available for those students that are struggling with that. And then we will have for elementary teachers and high school and junior high teachers that work for Bing who are checking on progress. And so we'll have one for elementary, we'll have separate ones for high school and junior high. And so they'll be checking in, hey, you know, you need to pick up the pace, or you're doing good on your progress, and just reaching out to you guys, parents, to say, hey, you know, are you doing okay? What help do you need? Things like that. If they opt out of taking a device, do they have to send their personal device to school every day? We're issuing every kid a device, and so if you say, we've got one for you to use at home, we don't want you to take the school's device home. We've talked about this. I think our plan is going to be, when they finish today's 7th hour, they go back to their 1st hour class. They will charge it in that class and leave it with that 1st hour teacher in that classroom, so they don't have to take that device home, and then they can use your device at home. They come back to school the next day, 1st hour, their device is there. So we've talked about that. We think that's what it's going to look like. I hope that's what it's going to look like. But no, you don't have to send that to school every day. If you want to, you can. All right, I think I'm caught up on questions there. So here are some symptoms and just kind of the overlap of it. And so what other things look like. And so that first column there is the symptoms of COVID. So anything that they have on that right there, that is, you know, the symptoms, and that's what we're going to ask you to look at. But, you know, you can see that the cough may be seasonal allergies. It could be any of those things. And so just because you have a cough, it doesn't necessarily mean you have COVID. If a student, you know, but we're wearing masks in class, you know, and so we have some students that have allergies and they cough, they're going to have a mask on. And so hopefully that'll protect it. But if you feel like it's any of those symptoms, if it's a new cough that your child usually doesn't have allergies, or they've got that fever with it, or any of these other ones, fever, fatigue, shortness of breath, if they lose the taste of smell, lose the sense of taste or smell, that could be a sign as well. And so that's what we look at there. This quarantine versus isolation, we've had a lot of questions about that. Quarantine is, you know, if you've been in direct contact with a positive case, there's a good chance you're going to have to quarantine 14 days after your last contact. If you're isolation, that's means you have it. And then you've got 10 days that you're going to have to isolate and be symptom free and all that. So 24 hours fever free without any fever reducing medication. Here's a checklist. When we get to every day before you send your child to school, we ask you to ask these questions to your child. They have a fever of 100 degrees or more. Are they experiencing a new loss of taste or smell, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea? Are they experiencing any of the 2 or more of those symptoms: chills, cough, fatigue, muscle, body aches, headache, sore throat, congestion, or runny nose? And then any of those warning symptoms: trouble breathing, bluish lips, face, chest pain, new confusion, unable to wake or stay awake. You know, those emergency ones, I would probably contact or get them to the, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving medical advice, but those would concern me more. And then those other questions there, if their answers to any of those questions yes, your child should remain at home. And so then they would just jump online and join online. Like I said, it may not be a live lesson that the teacher's doing, but they may have recorded a lesson and put it on there, and then they're going to be adding material to that the whole time. And so by sending your child to school, you are representing to Bing School District. The answer to each of these questions is no. And so that's where that's going to be. This last page, I think it's the last page, is a release of information form. If we have a positive case in the school, if my understanding from the health department is that unless they have this form here, then they can't tell us exactly who it is. They may call and say, you've got a third grade student in a certain class that has tested positive for COVID. If we have a release of information, then the health department should be able to give us the name, and then we can do the contact tracing. We hope that if there's ever a positive case, that you will contact us and let us know, hey, this is a positive case. And so we can start doing some tracing, but this release of information form will help so that we can make sure we notify everyone who needs to be notified. And I think that's important as a parent I'm going to have kids in school. And I know you're going to have kids in school. And so the best information we can give each other about positive cases and things like that, I think the better it's going to be for us. Okay, let me stop this. Okay, so that's the end of the plan there. I'm going to take a quick sip of water and answer a few more questions that have been brought to me. What about extracurricular activities? At this point, extracurricular activities are on OSSAA. There are supervising authority there. As far as they're concerned right now, we're continuing. We are taking precautions in extracurricular activities. Anytime the students get on the bus, they're going to have masks on. We've asked the sports that are in dugouts, fall baseball and softball, that when they're in the dugouts, they wear a mask. If they're out on the field, they don't have to have a mask on, but when they're in the dugouts, they do, or traveling. We've started, if they're in weight rooms right now, we've asked that they put on masks in weight rooms so that they're not, and then we're cleaning between sets and things like that. But, and that's just something else that's important. And I know it's hot outside, but as a parent, if I've got a child participating in sports, that we communicate with our kids and say, when you're in the dugout, do what the coach tells you to do. If they ask you to put your mask on, put your mask on, because, that's what's going to keep it safe. Because if you have a case on a team and those kids have all been together, there's a good chance that sport's shut down for a little bit. And so, just the more we can talk to our students, and this is new, we understand that. We understand that they're not used to it, but we think if we just continue to reinforce that this is something that has to be done for us to have a chance to continue playing sports, that they'll do it. Somebody had asked about kids. Kids are kids. Kids do some stuff sometimes that we're not too fond of, acting like they're coughing on someone, acting like they're sick, spitting on stuff. And, this is just another one of those things. Just please talk to your kid. This is not the number one, that's probably never acceptable, but this is sure not the time to be doing it, because this is a very serious situation that's going on, and it's not anything to joke around. And so any kid who does anything like that, it could fall under a discipline code where they could be disciplined for things like that. So, just talk to your kids. This is important to make sure we're being safe about this. I have a question. What kind of mask? Gaiters, homemade. The one that I've seen where they said bandanas aren't as effective. So cloth coverings. I've got one that's one of these cloth coverings like this. Those kind of things. The gaiters, I think they're they go around the neck, and then you can just pull them up and pull them down. Those are acceptable. For a homemade mask, I think this was ordered somewhere. So, if it's something like that, yes, that's fine. And my understanding is that the mask protect everyone from you. If you were to have it, you've got a mask on, it gives everyone else added layer of protection. And if both of us have it on, then it's even more protection there. So yes, those kind of masks are fine. They do have to fall under dress codes. So, you know, just they've got, as far as like the t-shirts that could have objectionable printing or things like that, they've got to meet that as well. How will we social distance in common areas? That's going to be something that a lot of the places already have areas like high school student center. They've already got it set up to where they only have a limited number of chairs in there. And so some students will be allowed in there, some students will be in classrooms. And so we're going to try to, some of the common areas, try to reduce the amount of students in there, like cafeterias. Like I said, not everybody's going to be eating the cafeteria every day. And so hopefully we're going to try to reduce the number of people in common areas across the district. So that's the best way we do that. And then if they're not able to, they all have the mask on, then we think that'll give us some protection there. All right, can we walk kids into class? And how will we handle meet the teacher? So that's a site-specific question. That is a concern. Meet the teacher, I think I think what we're planning on doing at some of the early elementary sites is scheduling times that first week that we go back to school. We go back on the 13th. I think it's the 10th, possibly 11th, one of those days, where they're going to set up times in certain grades for new students coming in. And then they're also going to do like a virtual thing for people who have been here just to meet their teacher. So just trying to reduce the number of adults in the building before we start school. But the sites will be giving out that information. They may have sent out something today. If they didn't today, it should be coming in the next few days of how that's going to go. Walking kids into class. I know first grade and up are not. We've had discussion about pre-K and kindergarten. That's going to be a site-specific thing as well. I believe we've kind of landed on pre-K may be able to the first date. And so I apologize for not having the direct answer for that, but that's going to be a site-specific question that we're working on. And it's not just the site principal is going to make that decision. We'll all get together and decide what's best for that site. And so we hope we'll get you more information on that. But as far as second grade and up, or first grade and up, that's probably not going to happen anywhere this year, walking kids into class. So handling exemptions from mask wearing, and I don't know what I did with that, but there is, in some of the guidance that we've gotten, there is some exemptions on mask wearing, and you know, the CDC, the latest one I read says, you know, the only ones they don't recommend wearing it if you're under 2, or if you are not able to remove your mask. But I know there's going to be some situations where there may be doctor's notes or things like that, but that'll be more of a case-by-case basis. So if that's an issue that you foresee for your child, we ask that you contact the school or contact us in the office, and we can go over that to figure out exactly what that's going to look like for your child. Because we know there's some classes we have that it may not be possible to put mask on, and we know there's going to be some of those exceptions, and so we'll be following the guidance from the State Department of Health and the State Department of Education on what that's going to look like. And I hope I have answered. And so as I've gone, I've thought about this, that I probably wasn't real clear on this, and I know that there's been discussion about this. If you start virtually, if you start in a total online virtual school, you have 10 school days to switch back over to traditional. And we do that, we just didn't want necessarily a situation where kids are going from virtual to traditional to virtual to traditional. So we don't want that switching like that. And so once you start virtual, you have 10 days to switch over to the traditional school. If you start traditional wanting to switch over to virtual, that would just have, we'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis and a site-by-site basis, because it'll look different in elementary than it does high school. And so that'll just be something we have to look at. If you start the virtual and you pass the 10-day limit and you say, okay, we're doing virtual and I'm all in, and you get 30 days into this and you're like, something happened and now I can't do this anymore with my child. Can I go back to traditional then? We know there could be some circumstances that are out of your control or out of our control where we may have to allow a switch like that. That would have to be on a case-by-case basis. And when we know there's going to be some of those where I planned on doing virtual, but something happened and my job called me back, or this happened, and so now I've got to go back to work. There's no one to keep my child. So that could be an extenuating circumstance where, okay, now you're going to come back, and then we'll just have to look on where we are in the semester. Can they finish their semester of online classes like in a separate classroom with with an aide in there, or a teacher in the computer lab or something like that, where they continue that virtual part, and then at Christmas switch over back into a regular classroom. So if you choose the virtual, that is not a full year choice. I mean, it's you have 10 days to switch back, but at Christmas anybody can leave the virtual and come to traditional. So I don't want you to think that, man, if I'm in that virtual, that's a full year commitment, because it's not. At Christmas, if you decided this didn't work, maybe at Christmas there's a vaccine and we're getting close to back to normal, or something happened and it's gotten better, and you say, you know what, I'm sending my kid back to school and I want them to do traditional at Christmas, that's an easy option. That's just hey, I'm sending them back, we'll enroll them back in the traditional class and get them going. And so that's what that'll look like. If you start traditional and want to go to virtual, we'd have to talk about that, because that could be a situation where, my kid goes to school and they've been in school for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and all of a sudden they have to quarantine because I got it or something. Then they would just do their online with their class that they've been, working with the whole time. They'll just continue to work with that. So that's something we'd have to work on that on a case-by-case basis. So I say all that to say, if there's any questions that you ever have, just please call. And I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, we've been working hard on this, and we've feel like we've got a good plan, but we know it's not a perfect plan. Like I said, we know it's not it's not a foolproof plan. But I want you to feel like you can call me anytime, or you can call the principal anytime and get the answers that you need, because like I said, we're on this together, and we're here to help you, and we have the same goal. We want your child to have a good school experience and to graduate and go on and be productive members of society. So anytime there's any questions you have, don't hesitate to call, to get the exact answer of what it's going to be, because I know there's a lot of rumors out there and a lot of people seeing different plans. And so that's where I just ask, just give us a call. We'll be glad to talk to you anytime to figure that out. All right, I got another question. So what about drama? Will they be able to have their full fall performance? And then if they do, will audience be able to watch? So, that's one of those things where if we're having school, as long as we can do things and keep social distance as much as we can, and we wear masks and we're in school, we plan to do our things. We plan to have our drama productions. We plan to, I know band has been a question, and Dr. Smith has worked on what she's going to do, and some of her practices are going to be outside, and so we want to be able to provide all those opportunities for kids that it's important for them to do those things. And so we plan on doing it as much as we can possibly do, as long as we can keep students safe and our staff safe. But if something happens and we could do the performance and we can't have an audience in there, then we would do a thing where we're going to broadcast it and have an online viewing option. So our goal is to be able to have spectators wherever we're doing things. That brings up like sports. When we do that, You know, we're going to ask people to social distance in the stands. You know, if you're at a baseball or softball game, you've got areas you can put lawn chairs down there and spread out. You know, sit with your family units if you can, but try to leave distance between the two. And we just ask that you know, if you can, wear a mask, you know, onto our, you know, as a visitor onto our site to an outdoor sporting event. Just wear, if you can wear a mask so that if you can't social distance, then we can continue to offer those kind of things. Okay, got a few more questions that came in. If a student staff tests positive, will parents be notified if their child was in contact? I think any positive test, yes, you'll be contacted. It goes back to this: if we don't have that release of information, we don't know exactly who it is. It may be a thing where we have to say a child in your class tested positive, and so, but if we know who it is, we should be able to say your child was in contact with this student, because we can look at seating charts and see that, you know, this person sat in the middle of the class and they didn't have a mask on and everybody around them has been in contact. So we're going to do as much as we can to notify you in the case that that ever happens. How will parent pickup work? Can they come in the building? The answer to that's no. You know, we've talked about that. Some of our plans, I mean, it's still July 27th. We're still working on some of those plans of what that's going to look like. But I know at Homer a lot of times in the afternoon. I know at Francis a lot of times in the afternoon. You know, people would come into the building to pick up kids. That it just can't happen this year. And so we will be somehow walking your kid out. We've talked about some plans. We'll release more of that specific plan later to make sure you guys know how we're going to do parent pickup and what that's going to look like. Okay, I think I've answered that about starting traditional, moving to virtual. Where do you find details for each site? I assume that you're talking about just each individual site plan details, just like I was talking with parent pickup, possibly Homer or Francis. They will probably be releasing information as soon as they can, just what it's going to look like for site. And I'm sure they will be sending out robocalls and things like that to make sure that you are aware of kind of what that's going to look like. So, and like I said, we'll do district robocalls, like check your site's plan, things like that, what that looks like. Will school supplies list, can't read this one. Will school supplies list change? Okay, well, school supplies list change. So pre-K through 6th grade, our JOM students, pre-K through 12, JOM students will get their supplies provided for them like they have in years past. Pre-K through 6th grade, if you're not a JOM student, we had a donor step up. Cross Point Church stepped up for pre-K through 6th grade. They've bought supplies for every other student, and so yeah, so that's so those supplies have been provided for pre-K through 6th grade. When your child shows up in class, they're going to have their supplies on their desk. There are a few school supplies left. I think those are on the website that list some things that, you know, that we don't provide, like backpacks, and there are going to be some backpacks provided, but you know, just some very specific things per grade level, like baggies. If you can find hand sanitizer, we'll take any hand sanitizer you can get us. But those school supply lists will be on the websites. And so, but like I said, pre-K through 6, all the main things, crayons and scissors and all the things that are in those school supplies, those are provided for thanks to those groups. I'll make sure I've got them all answered here. All right, my last thing is this, is just a plea to you. Like I said, we're a public school, and we understand that there's no substitute for a good teacher being in front of students. And so that's what we do. That's what we feel like we're very good at. And that's the essence of who we are. We've had to quickly transition to this virtual school. This is something that we have talked about doing for about a year now. And so this is something that we have been working on to make sure it's good. And so if you're looking at going to, we know you have options. We know we have options out there, that there's other online schools and there's things, other places you can go. I just ask you this: if you're looking at going to a different online school, to look at our program and see what our program looks like, because it's not going to be, I understand the spring. I mean, I understand what that was like. And I understand I had a student that one of them logged in every day and did something, and one of them couldn't get to do much of anything. So it's going to look different. So I ask that if you're looking at doing the online option and you're thinking, I'm going to go somewhere else, call your principal, get in contact with us so that we can talk to you and show you what our plan is going to look like, because this is going to go away someday and we're going to come back to school, and we want your kid to be able to easily transition back into what we're doing. And so that's what I ask. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call me, Stacy Capps, my assistant, any of the principals, and they will be glad to talk to you. And just like I said, just ask that you take a look at our program and give us a chance with that. Had one last question come in. If student isn't virtual, can they attend extracurriculars? Yes, and when I talk about joining other schools or taking other online options, here's one of the biggest options for keeping your kid at Bing is, if you choose the online option, your child can still participate in extracurricular activities that we offer. And so, if you say, I want to keep my student at home, I don't feel good about this, but I'm okay with them going to band or athletics or FFA, they'll have to be enrolled in that hour that they're in that class. So like if you're in FFA, you're going to have to come up for the FFA hour, or if you're in athletics, you're going to come up 7th hour, if you're in band, 1st hour, whatever it may be. But yes, you can still participate in the extracurricular activities. If we're able to offer robotics in the elementary school, I know that's a huge program that we have that is a very successful program, but we're not sure what that's going to look like at the first of the year. But once we get that going, if your elementary student is online and they want to come do the extracurricular robotics, then that's there for them, where a lot of schools don't offer that. I will also say, if you're online and you're enrolled for Bing schools, those virtual students, we're not going to deliver meals if we're doing regular school. But if your child's enrolled in Bing online virtual school, then you can come up and get meals for your kid. Now, if they're not on free or reduced lunches, there's a fee for that. But they're enrolled in Bing schools, they get all the cafeteria access that the other students got as a grab and go, and then you can take that home. So if you have any specific questions, there's been questions about virtual students transferring in, things like that. If you have questions about that, just call the central office and call me, call principals, and we can talk about that with you. There are some options if you want to transfer in. There are some options for us to allow you to transfer in as a virtual student that we didn't know were there, and we got some clarification on that today. So, you may have somebody you want to transfer in, and we can look at doing that as well. So that's something that is there. So enrollment's coming up this week. If you haven't filled out the online process, you can do that, and you can do that all online this year. We don't have to come into the school. If you don't finish it by Wednesday, then we need you to come into school and finalize that enrollment. And like I said, when you come in the door, we're going to scan temperatures. Please wear a mask to enrollment so that we can protect everybody that's coming in there. But that'll be this week, Wednesday, Thursday. Like Wednesday's at Homer, and Thursday, Friday, is at all sites. And so ask that you get your enrollment taken care of so we can know who's coming, what the plan's going to be, because we still may have to adjust plans. If there's any changes in this plan, we'll communicate that through our things that are on this thing. This thing will be posted to our social media sites, so you can get it and look at it more closely. And then any communication that comes out, you can know where to look for that, and we'll continue robocalls. And so Like I said, give us a chance if you're looking at the virtual school. If you're a traditional school, look forward to seeing you on August 13th. Back in school, ready to get you guys back. And just got one more text that this is one of the most important things. We're going to need substitutes. And so that's going to be a big issue. And I probably should have said about this earlier. There's a chance that we could have no kids sick, but if we have cafeteria staff that's out and bus drivers that are out and too many teachers that are out, we could have to transition to some hybrid learning for our traditional students because we don't have enough cafeteria staff to serve meals or enough bus drivers to get kids here. And so I know you can't just sub on a bus, but anybody who's willing to sub, please go online to beingschools.com, fill out an application and put on there that you're interested in subbing, or just call your site, Homer or Francis or junior high school or Beatty Elementary, and let those people know that you're interested in subbing, and they'll point you in the right direction, because I think that's going to be a big hurdle for us this year, is finding enough subs. And so if that's something that you're interested in or willing to do, I ask that you please give that some consideration so that we can make sure our schools are properly staffed so we can continue to have school. So thank you. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to call, and we'll be glad to take your questions and give you the best answers we give you. And a lot of times you can get answers answered right then, because we're here most of the time. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you. Thank you.